So desalination needs power, and power needs water. Yeah, this is bad. Although what's worse is that I realized that I was calling it desalinization when it's actually just desalination.
Well, no, it's both. You can desalinize water.
That's right. It's both. It's both. It's absolutely both.
I've said desalinize too. So either we're both wrong together, and you're in my company, whether that's good or bad, or there are multiple ways to say that, in which case you're in the clear.
But at any rate, it could be a solution so people don't die of thirst, but it's not going to solve the industry problem at all. And it's probably not even enough to really do that much with agriculture.
Precisely.
Okay. So basically, that's not going to work. China's screwed.
Well, it does seem like it's coming to a head where it's going to affect food production, and China already has food production issues. It's going to affect power production, which China already has power issues. It's going to affect industry, could cause economic issues. It seems like this is just creating a whole host of problems that at any point could just implode.
It's not going to be, it's not like a tornado, right? They see this coming.
They see it coming, but, turning the Titanic is hard, right? They have their current economic model. They have their current industry, their current infrastructure, their current population. And those are things that are not readily changed at scale very quickly, right? So while it may not hit as a crisis between today and tomorrow, you still can have a seasonal drought, right? That becomes very, very acute over the span of, say, several months and can dramatically accelerate, right, the urgency of this kind of a crisis. And you simply can't adjust the supply levers fast enough, right? The only thing you can do is curtail demand, and you do that with rationing, right, or cuts. And so that is what we've already seen during scattered stretches. And unfortunately, those are problems that are likely to get a lot worse before the government or anyone else is able to make them better, right? I mean, there have been efforts to make industry more water efficient, to promote water conservation, to increase the price of water. Water in many places is either free or heavily subsidized, which is nice if you're a user, but it removes the incentive to conserve, right? And so that is an incentive that often needs to be put in place. And it's painful, but it then sends an economic signal that aligns the incentives of the users with the societal need to cut back, right? The problem is those kinds of things are extremely politically unpopular, and they're very hard to do without a lot of pain if you do it in a very short amount of time. And, there are very few governments that have succeeded in doing that kind of thing, right? I mean, one of the secrets for Israel, which we've mentioned again, is just everyone knew from the beginning that there was no water. So you had to build from the outset with a mentality that water is really scarce. Otherwise, you got to move someplace else. In places where you're used to consuming a lot of water, it's human psychology that changing behavior or just shifting an economic model is extremely difficult, both, psychologically and politically. And then you also have to retool your whole economy, right? Or your whole society around infrastructure that recognizes that scarcity and operates under those constraints.
Also, I feel like communist China is more of a society that's they do better with rationing than they do with free market price approaches to incentives. That's just kind of what they're used to for the last many decades.
So the rationing approach, solves the problem in the short term, right? It keeps you from having total chaos when the government can step in and say, you're getting water or power, and you have to shut down until the crisis is over, right? So you have kind of a conductor or a quarterback, pick your analogy, who's calling the plays. And so on a superficial level, that solves the short-term acute problem. But even that, of course, comes at a high cost when you are preferencing, say, household consumption over industry. But what happens when you shut down industry, right? It means your people are out of work. They're furloughed. It means you're not meeting your international contractual obligations. It means, you're not generating foreign trade, right? And so part of the reason that many companies and societies globally are diversifying their supply chains away from China, the factory of the world, is because of these natural resource constraints, right? Now, there are, of course, a host of other reasons, political, economic, what have you, that's maybe subject for another conversation. But one of those reasons is because natural resources are so strained from decades of unbridled growth, right? That are now those problems are coming home to roost. That when you have the world's biggest industrial base, that has a major environmental impact, right? And you can maybe mask the effects of that for some period of time, but you can't mask them forever, particularly as you continue to grow. And so that's a problem for which China's on the front lines, though, of course, it's not a unique problem to China. And other regions are grappling with that too.
Right. So take Apple, for example. Apple has recently been diversifying its manufacturing, I think, to India and Brazil. And for certain laptops, I think they're even doing it in Texas, yet another country. And
Lone Star Republic forever. Yay, Texas.
I assume that Apple was doing it because they were upset about the genocide of Uyghurs in Xinjiang, but maybe it also has to do with other factors.
I think there are a lot of factors. I don't even know if the Xinjiang situation is front of the list, right? They just had all.
I'm kidding. It's probably not on their list.
I think
yeah. So sorry. My antennae for sarcasm are sometimes a little challenged on Friday.
No, I apologize because none of my jokes are funny.
I do think that the U.S. government did make that a problem for Apple, though, with their their forced labor bill.
Yeah.
So that probably moved it up.
I'm glad I got my iPhone back when I could still get it with slave labor.
There you go.
Anyway, go on. So there's a water manufacturing, et cetera. So how would that affect a company like Apple?
Well, a lot of high-end electronics, again, believe it or not, the manufacturing does require a lot of water, right? So I don't know exactly the nuances of how water is used in some of those high-tech facilities, but suffice it to say that they are also impacted by a water crisis. And so that is one of many, many supply chain issues that are causing disruptions, right? I mean, you have COVID, you have labor unrest, you have trade wars and things like that. But you also have these natural resource constraints and natural disasters that are also playing a major role. And in general, it's an object lesson for the need to diversify supply chains, right? Because you don't want to have all of your supply chain to be in a region that's hit by a drought that then has a water crisis and a power crisis. You have to have some supply chain diversification to try to protect from that kind of thing.
Do you think that's why Elon Musk diversified into Twitter?
Well, yeah, certainly opinions and words are things that are seldom in short supply, right? So I think that we're not going to have, emojis, right? We're not going to have an emoji deficit anytime soon. So maybe it was a smart play.
Yeah. Which is because of Tesla
in China. Yeah, I think Tesla is getting hit pretty badly by a lot of this stuff in China.
Well, I mean, Tesla is not just hit by manufacturing issues; they're also hit by being ripped off by, China's homegrown electric vehicle companies that are doing it for cheaper. So that's a whole other issue.